Okay. Should work. Okay, thank you. Okay, so I'm a mom of 3. This is my youngest. He's 2, and he loves animals. This is Ari. My son, he can't yet say the name of animals, but he can certainly make animal sounds better than I can. And he loves learning about animals just like I did when I was a kid. So I'm going to ask for some audience participation here. I've got a really hard quiz. No, I'm just teasing. But really, I want you to help me fill in the blanks. So if you could help say the answers out loud with me. Cows eat grass. Right. Sharks eat fish. I heard it. Koalas eat leaves, eucalyptus leaves specifically. Spiders eat bugs. Humans eat. Okay. So yeah. So I heard some of you say it. You might go thinking, oh, doesn't quite fit with the other categories because humans eat everything almost. So it does seem like humans eat almost everything. When you look out into the world or you go to a big mall food court, it's easy to find people eating all sorts of things. You can easily find people in your lives probably that survive on nothing but processed junk food. You may know somebody who eats nothing but meat. You may know someone who eats nothing but plants. So from peanut butter and jelly to jelly beans, humans around the world are adapted to an astonishingly wide variety of foods. But how does what we eat affect our health? So the study of how different foods, the food compounds, the quantities and the dietary patterns, how they impact our mood, our health, our wellness, and our risk of disease is the realm of the nutrition scientists. And what I'm here to talk with you about today is an evolutionary perspective on nutrition, which considers our long journey to becoming human has influenced every part of our wellness. So my own journey to an evolutionary perspective on nutrition was an evolution of itself, so to speak, starting with my own childhood fascination for animals. So I loved learning about animals, where they live, what they eat, and especially about the things that made them uniquely fit to their specific environment. So take a saltwater crocodile, for example. So saltwater crocodiles are specially adapted for grabbing and holding on to prey. So they have 66 teeth, 33 on the top, 33 on the bottom. They're conical shaped and they're designed specifically for grabbing and holding on to. They're not designed for biting or chewing. Their teeth also often frequently break, but it's not a problem for a crocodile because they're constantly growing new teeth. And in one lifetime, they can actually go through thousands of teeth. They also can open their mouth to an astonishingly wide angle, and their jaws are double jointed, giving them one of the most powerful bites in the animal kingdom. Or take the koala bear. Eucalyptus is a plant that is toxic to most animals. But koalas have a special adaptation in their digestive system that allows them to detoxify eucalyptus leaves so that they can exploit this environmental niche. There's certainly no shortage of fascinating examples of adaptations in the animal kingdom. Don't even get me started about cows and their 4 stomachs or spiders and their webs. The animal kingdom is incredible. But it took me a long time before I realized that we're incredible too. That just like these other animals I've talked about, we also have been shaped by the forces that we call evolution into creatures that have these equally amazing adaptations. But the question is, what food are we designed to eat? So I began my inquiry into the causes of heart disease and obesity about 20 years ago. These are diseases that affected my family, and I wanted to know, is disease destiny, or is there choices that we can make that could help prevent us from getting these diseases. So I started out thinking, because I was raised by a dad that really emphasized exercise, and that was the problem. People were not getting enough exercise. So that's was what I initially thought was the answer to the problem. And so I was engaged for about 6 years in a national research project that looked at the impact of active lifestyles on chronic disease rates in the United States. And what I found from that research is that physical activity is very important, yes, for our mental health, for our cardiovascular health. But in terms of chronic disease risk, what we eat actually has a much bigger impact on our health outcomes. So for about the last 10 years, I've been more focused on nutrition, and I've been collecting clues from a variety of scientific disciplines to help me answer the question of how nutrition relates to our risk for chronic disease. And I'm going to share some of these clues with you today. So first, I'm going to start with psychology, and I'm going to ask, engage your participation here again. This is a mini experiment I call eating with the eyes. So for a second, I want you to pretend that you haven't eaten all day. You're really hungry, and you come into my restaurant, and on the menu, I have 4 soups and 4 smoothies. You can only pick one, and I'm not going to tell you what's in them. Based on what you see with your eyes alone, which soup do you pick? A, B, C, or D? Well, hold on a second. I'm going to ask you in a second. And now, what smoothie do you pick? A, B, C, or D? Okay, so have your answer, and now I'm going to ask for just a show of hands. Who picked A? Raise your hand if you picked soup A. Oh, okay. Who picked B? Okay. Who picked C? You? Okay. Who picked D? All right. Now, what about who picked smoothie A? Okay, who picked smoothie B? All right, who picked C? Okay, and who picked D? Okay, well, I've done this experiment with about 1,000 students, and these are the results. So it might be a little different than what we saw in this room, but there's a fascinating reason why so many people pick red. And I always ask students before I share these results, I say, do you think that all humans prefer the same color food or different? And generally, all the students think that we would prefer different kinds of food. So they're very surprised to see that this is the results. And the reason has to do with our trichromatic vision. So humans are able to see 3 colors. We can see the color red, which is not a ubiquitous trait in the animal kingdom. So it turns out that herbivores and carnivores, most animals can see in the dichromatic range. There's actually a wide range of visions. But humans are, we are in the member of animals called primates. We're in the primate family, and primates are unique among animals in our ability to see the color red. So it turns out that among animals, the ones that are gifted with the ability to see red are generally the animals that feed on fruits and flowers. And the ability of the color red to excite our brains and our appetites has not escaped the food industry. So this brings me to zoology. So people are primates, and it can be helpful to look at the animals that we are most closely related to for clues about our evolutionary diet. So we are most closely related to the great apes. That would be orangutans, bonobos, chimpanzees, gorillas. And so what do they eat? Well, orangutans' diets range from 62 to 74% fruit. Chimpanzees, on average, 64% of their diet is fruit, and the majority of the remainder is plants. So for the most part, primates are classified by biologists and primatologists as frugivores, and they prefer sweet, ripe fruit when available, but they'll also eat leaves, flowers, seeds, even bark, roots, so many other plant parts. But they are also flexitarian like us. So they're able to ingest and pass through their digestive system a wide variety of food. And they do show a preference for sweet and cooked food. And They even will eat junk food and processed food when given a chance, and they will also suffer the health consequences like us. So, but many people say, well, we are very different than our we are very different than the great ape cousins. We have evolved as humans to eat meat and plants. So are we so different? Well, I'm going to look at a couple other cues. So anatomy. Our hands are very closely resemble our great ape cousins, and they're just perfect for climbing, grasping fruits, holding a handful of berries. Our teeth are perfectly designed for biting into a crisp apple or a soft plum, but not so much for grabbing and holding on to prey as in a crocodile. Physiology. So a fascinating area to consider in physiology is our tongue and our taste buds. So our sweet loving taste buds is one reason why we light up at birthday cake. And also why if you put a 1-year-old in a crib with a bowl of watermelon and a little baby rabbit, 100% of the time it will eat the watermelon and pet the rabbit, whereas a lion would be more likely to kill the rabbit and leave the melon alone, because lions and cats, along with a lot of carnivores, actually lack the ability to taste sweet. So there's been a lot of studies of the youngest members of the human family, babies and infants, and their preferences for food. And they find that it takes many more times to introduce a young human to a savory food than a sweet food. And that this preference for sweet is so deeply ingrained in our instincts that even fetuses respond to sweet. So there was a study where later in pregnancy, fetuses actually consume a lot of the amniotic fluid. And later in pregnancy, they injected a sweet fluid into the amniotic fluid, and it stimulated fetuses to swallow, while a bitter flavor inhibited their swallowing. Another fascinating area is archaeology. So now we are able to use a variety of techniques to analyze the fossil teeth and remains of our ancient ancestors to determine what they were eating. Techniques including microwear analysis that looks at the scratches and pits on teeth, and DNA analysis of the calculus on teeth. And what these studies are finding over and over are that our ancient human ancestors were primarily forest dwelling, and relied heavily on fruit and the resources of the forests. But epidemiology, this is really the area that rings closest to heart, that gives all of this inquiry purpose and urgency, because it turns out that there's a lot of evidence that eating contrary to the diet of our evolutionary roots is linked to many of today's leading causes of death, including heart disease, cancer, and diabetes. So consider the story of Baybeck and Makolo. They're two Western lowland gorillas at the Cleveland Metro Park Zoo. In 2008, they started exhibiting some disturbing behavior. So they started doing things like pulling out their fur and vomiting their food and re-ingesting it. And the zookeepers were really worried about them. So they took them to the vet and got them checked out. And both gorillas were 65 pounds overweight, and they both had developed heart disease, which is unheard of in wild gorillas. Well, they had been feeding these gorillas a diet of gorilla biscuits, which are a highly processed food and certainly far from in composition what gorillas have evolved to eat and what wild gorillas eat. So what they did is they changed their diet. They started bringing in wheelbarrows of whole plant foods, lettuce, cucumbers, mangoes, bananas, foods that more closely resemble the diets of wild gorillas. And after a while, both gorillas lost the extra 65 pounds and both started reversing their heart disease. And the good news is that humans also have the same ability. And I've collected I've collected quite a few, probably over 100 stories of people who have reversed heart disease by changing their diet in this way. And there's also quite a large body of nutrition and epidemiological research providing the evidence behind this, that heart disease is both preventable and reversible with a whole food plant-based diet. So if you look around the animal kingdom, it's easy to see that animals are adapted to a specific food that they've evolved and nature has shaped them for millennia. and that if they stray too far from that diet, that it can result in disease. So as is the case with the gorillas who, when fed gorilla biscuits, developed heart disease and became overweight, as is the case with pet rabbits and farmed rabbits, when they're fed manufactured pellets, they can develop deadly illness, or cats, if they're fed a vegetarian diet, they can also be threatened with deadly disease. Humans too, if we stray too far from the diet of our evolutionary roots, we experience illness. So it's easy to see that we're very different from our primate relatives today, but we're probably more alike biologically than we are different. Our shared heritage as primates and plant eaters extends back 55 million years on the tree of life, on the evolutionary tree of life. And today, epidemiological and nutrition science research is showing again and again that eating more whole plant foods helps protect us against some of our leading diseases, including heart disease, diabetes, obesity, metabolic syndrome, and cognitive decline. And there's often an inverse relationship with the more fruits and vegetables you eat, the lower your risk of these diseases, and the less you eat, the higher your risk. So evolution has shaped us into the creatures we are today. Every part of our being, our anatomy, our physiology, our psychology, and our risk for disease is deeply rooted in our past. Our future wellness and the quality of life we lead depends on recognizing who we are and viewing nutrition with a wide lens from an evolutionary perspective. Thank you.